up. I don't know
Da
why I
da
left
da da da. We're live. Hang on, we gotta check if Discord is actually on the right thing. No.
it. You peaked.
I'm always peaking. I have peak energy.
Peak energy.
I've peaked as a streamer probably.
You have not peaked as a streamer.
This is the best I'll do, guys.
I'm still holding on to those coattails, but god damn it.
This is the best I'm going to be as a streamer, guys. I'm never going to be popular.
Bring me with you. You're more popular than I am.
Don't you have a more popular friend that's better to hang on to than I do, and has more content, more aligned with what you want to do?
Yes, but he doesn't like me, so. No, I had a long conversation with him yesterday, not about streaming, but it was just debauchery whenever the two of us just talk to each other.
That's why we can't stream together. We'd get canceled immediately.
Oh yeah, if we were left to our own devices, we'd probably be removed from existence.
Yeah. All right, let's give Orgo a recap of what happened last chapter, everybody. All right, so where we last left off, Aoko was trying to kill Shindro because he saw her do magic stuff, and that, as you all know, that can't happen. But then the next thing we know, there was like this weird puppet thing that came up from behind her, and she was all like, well, I guess we're running now instead of killing him, so... Cherry, you need to be super successful that Orgo can get his cooking show. Orgo, you're gonna have a cooking show?
I'm having a cooking show? I'm trying to remember my past streams now to see if I mentioned a cooking show. I might have mentioned the Great British Baking Show because I've watched that show. Although I have mentioned I do cook, so I don't know.
Alright, so right now they're running through a glass labyrinth because that's where she thought she'd kill him. But, it didn't work out. So now we're running from a mannequin thing that can stretch its arms super long, and it seems like it's going to kill us. So let's go. There's still time for us to throw ourselves out a window. We can still be saved.
I know exactly what's going on.
No
questions at all. Don't worry about it. Trust the plan.
Trust the plan.
I will pitch a cooking show with Orgo. I just need to think of a name.
Shojuro furrowed his brows. He was grateful that she was answering his questions, but baffled by the strange words she was using. Like automaton.
Automaton.
I believe this game takes place in the 90s, but I'm not entirely sure. His words suggested that he was still concerned about her injuries. Aoko shook her head in irritation.
Attempt at trying to do running in the 90s.
Shojuro nodded. With that matter settled, he asked. Why did you leave me behind? That's some interesting logic, Aoko. Answering curtly, Aoko glared at her naive prey. The two of them headed for the next corner. Their legs began to slow as they rounded one more. Aoko rubbed her back as she tried to catch her breath. Though Aoko had insisted that she was fine, it appeared to have been bravado.
Bravado.
I know how to mispronounce words. It's okay. Orgo's here to correct all of my words that I say wrong.
You're gonna be sorely disappointed in my vocabulary.
Even the usually clueless Shojuro felt the desperation they were in. He stood behind Aoko with his arms folded. While they had a moment, he tried to make sense of everything. First, Aoko had nearly killed him. Though he was saved at the last possible second, it was by the strange, stretchy woman Aoko had burned to ashes 2 nights prior. He could barely make it out that night, but he considered it a her because it looked female. The woman's attack wounded Aoko's back and forced her to flee. Aoko had taken Shojiro with her, claiming that the reason she did so was to prevent her prey from escaping. In other words,
those are some eyes.
当たり前よ。あんなやつ、仮に2体で半分始末しても、あんた用の余力は残せるわ。
LMO, bruh, there's a recap. Well, he's recapping what he's trying to figure out what's happening. And as we all know from other Natsu's other works, he likes to, like, how do I say this? Not pace things, but, like, stretch it out by characters repeating themselves 3 times in a row.
Oh, he's one of those writers where he basically has nothing to say.
Yeah.
So he just reiterates what was just said.
Pretty
you
much.
know, like what just happened with me and you.
Yep. Her tone was sharp, but even Shojiro could see that she was struggling to stay confident. The damage to her body was too much to afford her any optimism. Still, the fury in her eyes refused to accept her circumstances.
中がところどころショートしてる。あの右腕は回路を混戦させるジャミングってわけね。
Though the proper response would have been for her to tremble in fear, she did nothing but shake her fists in anger. The disruption of formula was only supposed to work on absolute beginners. If it had been her roommate, the arm would have been repelled the instant it hit her, and the attacker's circuits burned out rather than her own. Attempting to establish a link to the magic circuits of another mage was like presenting your heart on a silver platter. It would have been no use in a battle against a superior mage. And yet her adversary had been designed to do just that. Coupled with the attacks on the areas of Mizaki under Aoko's jurisdiction these last few weeks, it was a clear statement from the enemy who revealed itself as a fellow mage 2 days ago. In other words, the puppet saw Aoko as no threat at all.
How must that feel? You're not even worth my time.
You're not even worth it. I'm just playing with you, bruh. Yeah. While she was still angry, the whirlwind of emotions within her started to fade. Her face was that of a hunter far beyond her years.
なんか俺の時より真剣だな。
まあね、あんたの時は遊びが入ってたし。
Rude.
Shojiro was not sure whether to be happy or sad at that.
わからないことだらけで何を聞い
Would
てい
have
いか
left.
わ
The
からない
next
んだ
line
け
was
ど。
just "you
一つだ
bitch,"
けいいか。
and he walked away.
No, the
Never to
problem
be heard of
is,
again.
the problem is that Shojiro is a naive little country boy who was raised without electricity or any electronics or stuff like that. So he doesn't know how to do anything, really.
Oh.
He's a little dumb, naive little boy who takes everything at face value.
And very socially awkward, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Aoko didn't respond. Her eyes were focused on the darkness before them. The silence was heavy, and the darkness was like a noose closing in on them. But Shojiro continued in spite of her indifference.
青崎はあいつも
This
殺
artist
すのか。
loves that shot, by the way.
What, the boob
Wonder
shot?
why? Yes.
A stillness
Front and
fell
center.
over them.
I think we've been front and center on about 5 screens since we started.
That's right, he's chronically nice and not useful in combat. A stillness fell over them. It was as if the gloom was pulling them in. No response. Their breathing was the only sound echoing in the dim corridor. There stood Shojiro, forcing her to confront her sins, and the magician girl who continued to ignore him. They spent a few seconds, seemingly frozen in time.
そう。それがあなたのキーワードみたいね。
Aoko whispered in a lifeless tone. Her sigh was tinged with both resignation and contempt.
何？
独り言よ。忘れて。
Yeah, I don't want to know about a sticky one
言っ
either.
とくけど、あいつは人間じゃないわ。
Get it.
信じられないだろうけど、自分の意志で動く人形なの。この前のも、今のやつもね。
It's not a human being, Sojiro. It's fine. Sojiro nodded as he processed the information. Not only did he not doubt her story, but he seemed to have accepted it at face value. Wait, never mind. I considered his potential to be sacrificed himself to block the hit. He could be the one used in combat.
なんか落ち着いてるわね、あなた。
まさかもう何が何だかわからないからあまり考えないことにしてるだけだ。
This is how everybody should be when faced with the typemoon series. Guys, just don't think about it. Don't think too hard about it. It's fine.
ただ
I'll be perfect for
人
this.
形に
then.
関しては別にどうということはない。
Hard enough for me to think as it is.
もしかして他でも自動人形を見たことあるとか？
都会の人形ってああいうものじゃないのか？
She barely stopped herself from falling to her knees. Of course, how could she have forgotten? She was dealing with a bona fide natural-born moron. As a student who transferred from the isolation of the mountains like an endangered species, his utter lack of common sense rendered anything miraculous as mundane. If automobiles were moving hunks of metal, then moving puppets were nothing to write home about. Wait, that meant to him the incident from the other night hadn't been extraordinary at all. He might have even assumed it was an everyday occurrence in the city.
参った。いっぺん頭の中覗いてみたいっていうか、ほんと、ここまで来ると感心するわ。
She has no respect for him
調
whatsoever.
子が狂うのも当然だった。普通は私に襲われた時点でもっと違う反応をするはずなのに。化け物とか、お化けとかさ。でもあなたにとっては、そういうこともある。で済まされてたわけなんだ。
Holy, you know what? Akko is pretty based. She is based.
なんかバカみたいね、私。
She is based. This is the reason why she's been around for as long as she has in the typemoon universe. Her strained face returned to normal for a moment. It hit her. There had been another way to handle this without anyone getting hurt. But the damage had already been done. There was no do-overs in life, nor should there be. Her own mistaken assumption had sent the situation spiraling out of control. But now that Shojiro was involved, she had to make sure her secret was safe with him. Even if there had been another, better option, that ship had sailed. Human relationships were ultimately driven by mutual misunderstandings. They were like tapestries woven from mismatched intentions. She's like, wait, I didn't have to do anything. He would have just treated it like a normal occurrence. She's like, F. Break time was over. There stood Aoko Ozaki and Shojiro Shizuki. Their first ever idle conversation had come to an end. Not that they had a choice in the matter. It was the jarring murmuring from around the corner that cut it short.
Go ahead, try reading it.
Well, it's got the translation on the top.
Ignore that.
Nobody remembers my funeral. My mourners have long since perished. We were born wrong. Life is suffering. Somebody save me.
Now let me try.
Okay.
Nemo memfunes mememet. Kidule esticates.
Extenditus est. Intonito evertimus. Don vivitmos. Dorel stont. Nemo advitit.
Well, way to show me up.
Latin!
I'm confident I got that first sentence correct.
You did get the first sentence correct, I'm pretty sure.
And then
Because it was also spoken out by the Japanese voice actress.
I didn't hear it
Yeah.
at all.
Oh.
Yeah, well, that's the story I'm going with.
The enemy was just around the corner, visible in the mirrors, parallel to it.
悠長に話してる場合じゃないわね。とにかく今は距離を。
Uh-oh. It evolved!
Dodge it!
In contrast to Alco's elegant blues, its lights were a malicious red.
感動
That's red is evil!
Gander shots!
It's Gander! There was a momentary flash of light before she had even extended her arm. But the instant she saw the enemy, her dormant feelings erupted once more.
さっきから邪魔なのよ。
She channeled all of her pent-up anger and shunted it into her right arm. The fog that filled with the corridor was no magical weaving, but rather a barrier of raw energy. It was equivalent to setting ablaze 3 buckets of gasoline to create a wall of fire, in the hope that it would stop an arrow in a fight. In flight. He's gonna be crushed when he finds out about Santa. Why has Santa never visited him?
Wait, Santa's not real?
If the puppet had attacked with its arm, it could have pierced such a wall easily, but because it had loosed curses with no definite form, the wall of energy repelled the attack. While it was a huge waste of magical energy, it was the only means Alco had to protect herself at that very moment. Unfortunately, its protection was reserved for Alco alone. Shojiro held his hand to his mouth. While the curse had been weakened to the point where Alco could no longer feel it, it had plenty of effect on Shojiro, who was not a mage. As if it understood this fact, the puppet turned its gaze from Alco to the unanticipated human beside her.
こいつは関係ないでしょ。
Enraged, she swung her arm forward once again. The blue light formed a wall to block the gander for a scant few seconds. It was enough of an opening to exploit. Just as Alco was forming the wall, the puppet pointed its right arm at her face and...
関係あるみたいだから逃げるぞ。
Before the rocket of death could be fired, Shojiro scooped her up and into his arms. How he mustered the strength to do so was a mystery, but he turned his back to the puppet and took off running.
He's Batman.
Batman! He was a nimble sprinter, resembling a deer leaping across obstacles. Shojiro rounded 2 more corners, ignored whatever complaints Alco was making, and eventually stopped in the middle of the 2nd floor. He set her down.
よし。ここまで
It's a good thing they let us
来れば
know he
少しは
set her down. I thought he was gonna carry her forever. If they never said that.
Yeah, Shojiro showed her heave as he caught his breath. As light as she was, running while carrying someone else would make anyone winded. She looked at him. She looked up at him in incomprehension.
こんな体力あったのに。なんで？
It made no sense to her. If he had the stamina to pick her up and run, surely he could have stood up and escaped when he had been downed earlier.
ああ、あの時は諦めてたから。
His words were unfiltered as ever. Though right then fighting for their lives, he lacked some of his usual absent-mindedness.
諦めてたってどうして？
さあ、忘れた、そんなことは。
Though he may have turned away because he regretted saying it aloud, his words spoke volumes. For some reason, it pained Alco to see him like that.
それより青崎、唐突に気分が悪いんだが。
By the way, I'm sick now. Well, that's because you just got hit with a curse, dum-dum. It's Gander!
And grabbing a 120-pound human being and running with them probably didn't help matters either.
Well, supposedly she's only 100 pounds, because, you know, she's Asian, so...
What is 20 pounds at that point? It's still the equivalent of running with an anvil.
あの赤い光も、その。
ええ、魔術の類よ。ガンド打ちって言ってね。北欧の呪
It's
詛の一
Gander!
つ。魔術回路のある私には効かないけど、抵抗のないあなたには効果てきめんみたいね。
なんだ、青崎には効かないのか。じゃあ危ないのはあの腕だけだな。
Alco had no idea why he was relieved, but she gritted her teeth and fought down the urge to snap at him. There was no use in yelling at a time like this. Above all, she felt that it would have been petty in the extreme to use her voice of annoyance right now.
She's not
そう
gonna
ね。
recover from this
注
one.
意するのは伸ばしてくる腕だ
Princess
け。
carried by the enemy.
大した相手じゃないわ。
That one's on you. I can't pronounce that.
Well, you kind desu.
Thank you.
This time it was not false bravado.
Bravado.
Bravado! I'm gonna keep doing it wrong.
And I'll keep correcting you.
Yeah! This will be our shtick.
Gotta find another word to do that with now.
Yeah.
How about the?
The.
Keep pronouncing the as the, and I'll keep correcting you.
Such an enemy would not normally be a breeze for Alko Owazaki. But her shameful negligence had led to the disruption of her magic circuits, making her less formidable than her enemy.
You didn't do it.
At this point, Alko had no way of attacking. The only option left to her was to wait for her to expend all of its magical energy, but its perpetual curse mechanism made it a non-starter. This game of tag would not end until one of them was dead. She realized that she was in the same position she had cornered Shojiro in earlier. She glanced at her right arm. She could not imagine how she had gotten into such a mess with her magical energy at more than half of its capacity. This had to be karma for having enjoyed toying with Shojiro earlier.
呆れた。いるところにはいるものね、神様って。
There are multiple gods, you just don't know it, lady. She grumbled under her breath as she shifted her focus. In fact, in this universe, the Greek gods are spaceships from outer space. Literal, no, like, for real, they're like AI spaceships. And polytheistic Hoshi. No, I'm stating a fact for this universe. Even Jesus was legit in this world. He was, I think he's classified as like the last, like, even though like there are still like gods and stuff that exist per se, for what we know, we think Wukong might still be around, and we know Jesus was real at some point. And that's what we know in the Fate universe.
I don't ask questions. I just nod in agreement.
Yeah. She had the fuel for the fire, but not the igniter. And that killing machine would chase her until the end of time, if need be. What she should do next was blindingly clear. She had to get back to normal.
青崎、
What is
ごめん、
normal,
考
though?
え事してた。
Especially in this
Supercharged.
goddamn universe.
Supercharged. she gets to get her magical energy working again.
Gotcha.
確か。よし、合ってる。しずきくん、そこに横道あるのわかる？
Alko pointed, but he could see nothing but the walls of the corridor. For one thing, the floor had nothing but left turns, and Alko was pointing to the right.
2階は中心まで行くと1階に降りる階段があるんだけど、それは私が壊したから使えないの。けど、ここの作りも意地が悪くてね。よく見れば、右に曲がる通路もあるのよ。上級者だけにわかる抜け道ってやつ。あとは注意して探せば、1階の階
She's
段までショー
describing
トカットできる。
speedrunners.
悪いけど、一人で行って。
Alko turned her back to Shojiro and started walking in the opposite direction of the escape route and down the long corridor towards the puppet in pursuit.
あいつは無差別だから、ここで壊さないといけない。魔術師は魔術師同士で争うのはいいんだけど、みだりに一般人に手を出しちゃいけないって決まりがあるの。あいつの目的は私のわけだし、結果がどうあれ、すっきりするでしょ。
If Alco won, the puppet would be destroyed. If Alco lost, its objective would be complete and it would shut down. Either way, them going their separate ways would mean Shojiro survived. This is what Alco meant. Though, she explained it as if the events were happening to two totally different people.
運が良ければ入り口までたどり着けるわ。それじゃあ、また明日ね。
Even Shojiro could tell she was just trying to act tough. But she had already disappeared around the corner by the time he thought to stop her. Woo!
さて。
Mentally, Alco bemoaned the disaster she was in. The quality of this puppet was on a completely different level compared to the one at the park 2 days ago. Big hero time? We're gonna find out. Let's see if they fight. The auto-incanting perpetual motion machine was a rarity in itself, but the puppet was also equipped with for battle with its extending arms and grander projecting crystalline eyes. Gander. It was the first-class product that, if put on the market, would sell for hundreds of millions of yen. Although that was only when factoring in the value of as an antique. For the purpose of the combat, it would have been made sense to mobile a significantly less expensive familiar. To use such a precious commodity as a tool for murder marked this puppet master as a completely different breed of crazy from the enemies she had faced up until now.
Vivo insomnia, solitare putresque inferis. Ictius mersobitus dies.
What kind of drugs does she just take?
Theobeum.
I think this is we're seeing from the eyes of
The robot,
yeah.
android thing.
Yeah. The
来たわ
automaton.
ね。
Automaton.
The
There we go.
automaton.
Ew.
A sound of a crackling music box filled the air. The automata, animated by its own curses, approached. The corridor measured approximately 30 feet in length. Akko lay in the wait around the corner further down the hall, anticipating the puppet's appearance. This was not to buy Shojiro time to escape. Far from it. Akko had concluded that she couldn't make a break for it under the current circumstances. Even if she did try to escape, and if by some miracle made it out of the House of Mirrors, that was as far as she would go. Outside with no cover, Alco would quickly be overtaken and skewered from behind. Like a kebab. As long as her magecraft was disabled, escape was impossible. Instead, she chose to force the enemy back. Her situation was not the most favorable, but neither was the puppet's. Though this narrow hall gave Alco no place to run, and it blah 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 blah. My brain just short-circuited there. And it turned prevented the puppet from reaching full speed. That was the weak point of this machine. Automata of this era had a tendency to struggle with minute changes in speed.
セット。
Minute.
Minute. Mean it?
I mean, it is also pronounced minute, but I think in terms of the sentence, it was supposed to be minute.
She flowed energy into her shorted circuits. Her blood flow and magical energy supplied were unstable. It would be difficult to construct a formula in this state. Blah, 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 blah. All she could do was harden her right arm by imbuing it with as much energy as she could. Doing so turned her arm into an improvised weapon like a hammer or bat, assuming she could manage to get it into close combat range. This was the best she could do. All she needed now was a plan of attack. The question wasn't that what weapon to use, but how to use the weapon she had. The simplest way would be to use the mirror's reflections to hide and then rush the puppet from its blind spot, except for one major problem. It did not have a sense of sight in the first place. The puppet's view of the world around it did not stem from visual feedback, but from mapping the topography.
I'm not
Topography. Topography. I think it's topography.
I think it's
Of it.
topography as well.
Yeah, of its surroundings. In theory, it was the same as a bat's echolocation. The environment could be measured based on the emission and return of high-frequency sound waves. Those chants served as a sensor pulses. As far as the puppet was concerned, the mirrors were no better than transparent panes, making even the thought of an ambush laughable.
近づけば
She's
近
gonna
づくほ
punch
ど
it out. Truly
よりリアルに
based.
察知される本当は遠距離からの狙撃が最適なんだけどガンドを撃ってくるならフィンの一撃ぐらい隠してるわよね
Gander was Scandinavian in origin and, considering its simplicity, highly versatile. It was most effective at impairing the target's health by pointing a finger.
I never would have guessed with that name that it was Scandinavian.
Hallingadangedurgan. It's Scandi. Anyway. As a single action magecraft, it was limited to only causing illness, but there was a second technique said to be the greatest mastery of the Gander shot. The fin shot. It could do more than cause simple illness. It was a deadly curse that could stop the heart.
Dun dun dun. You know what else can do that? A laser beam.
Whoa. The wound on her back set her nerves on fire. An unarmed girl and a deadly automation. Automaton. It was clear that she was the one destined for death. She considered her slim chances of survival when a vision sent chills down her spine. Quietly using everything she could to clamp down on the feeling, Alco faced her all too familiar illusion. She clenched her teeth to keep them from making a deafening clatter. But there, the sensation of fingers crawling up her back behind her specter stared and laughed. This alone made Alco want to bolt. On top of it all, when Alco tried to mentally simulate the coming fight, she estimated a 2 in 10 chance of dying in the first 5 seconds.
I think I've noticed.
Normal, right?
I think I've noticed quite a few typos as well as we've been reading this, but I haven't really.
Not as
commented
bad
on
as
them.
Fate's Day Night. At least this seems like it was fixed up at some point. We're so back. %. At times, her predictions were harsher than reality. If Alco fought the puppet 10 times, she would die twice. If she could not stop herself from visualizing her own corpse. She imagined herself collapsing, crumbling under the puppet's curse. Her eyeballs swollen like a blowfish, blood and other fluids oozing from her every bodily orifice. 1 in 5, 1 in 5, 1 in 5. A 1 in 10 chance of death was bad enough, but a 1 in 5, it drove her crazy.
Speaking of which, I need to go eat. After all that.
The blood and ooze really makes you hungry, huh?
Yes.
But Alco forced down her heart as it tried to escape from her mouth. Taking in a deep breath, she peered into her own reflection. She thought back to the White Knight half a year ago. This, she decided, was nothing compared to that. 6 months ago at the Kunonji estate, the Hound of White Roses, the Wander Snatch that appeared from within the thick fog, had tried to kill Alco 100 times out of 10. The Wander Snatch.
Me animam brutalis, otem eftura negata sunt. Manes sum, animam definiram bigum est.
A dark curse shattered Alco's daydream. It was only 30 feet away. The puppet rounded the corner. Either side stood in the shadows, their forms indistinct. The puppet gave no warning. Without preamble, it swiftly fired at a Gander barrage. Just as Alco planned, the curses fizzled out as they hit her mist-like barrier of magical energy. The protection would only last a few seconds, giving her just enough time to... Its stretchful spear spraying towards Aoko's face.
Bingo!
The lethal weapon grazed her cheek. All her experience analyzing the puppet's attack patterns gave her the wherewithal to evade the attack by the hair's breadth. That word looks so weird.
Yeah, I don't know if it's spelt like that. Hold on. It feels like it's spelt wrong. It's probably not, but... no, that's how it's spelt.
It's just one of those English words that looks wrong with whenever you look at it. Wherewithal is a great word. It's just one of those words that look wrong. Breadth, too.
Breadth.
Breadth.
It was one thing if a puppeteer were pulling the strings, but autonomous dolls had their limitations.
Autonomous.
Aoko had bet everything on this killing machine following a predefined template. The puppet would use a given attack for a given range, and she could adjust her tactics to that.
いけるこのまま
Before its arm had a chance to fully retract, she charged the puppet. It was a risky gamble, but her overall chances were slim to begin with. The scales tipped in her favor. If her predictions were correct, that there were two ways she would die. One was from a fin shot fired at that range. And the other was if the puppet's attack pattern was beyond her ability to foresee. The instantaneous mass transfer. Instantaneous? Is that instantaneous? I don't know.
Instantaneous.
Okay, mass.
You're right.
Otherwise known as mass displacement. Immediately after Aoko dodged the puppet's arm, something smashed into her abdomen.
Diggity.
The head-on collision from the shoulder felt like a rocket. But where had the ability to propel itself come from? Puppets like this were not built to have the ability to jet around like that. Doing everything in her power to stay conscious in spite of the pain, Aoko could just make out what had happened.
推進力じゃなくて牽引力
Yes, the puppet's arm had not returned to its body. It was lodged in the wall and reeled itself in from the other direction.
そんなのありか
It's a Gundam! Swallowing her surprise, she hastily pulled herself back up. Her abdomen, specifically her diaphragm, had been dealt a significant blow. The attack left her disorientated. Thankfully, the puppet was surprisingly lightweight. Her bones and organs were intact, and she had sustained no life-threatening damages. She was having a hard time breathing, however. She was shaken, though she managed to keep her calm. In another 2 seconds, she would be back on her feet. No, that was 2 seconds too long. She told herself to calm down. That she was already calm. She only briefly lost her bearings, and she was fine. She could recover her breath and her vision later if only her body would move!
Intellectus non necessarius est. Iesque esca. Nostro ablat fit.
So, question.
Answer!
This is a video game. This is a genre/video game related thing. Do you ever have choices to make that would change the narrative?
I think in this visual novel, there are no options. I think this is just a straightforward novel. Because I believe this is like a set story.
Okay.
By the writer. Like, I think there was like no options to like change how the story would unfold. Like, Natsu has an interesting way of writing where there are some things that always have to happen, you know?
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So I would not like this genre whatsoever on video game.
Probably not. There are other visual novels where it's a pick your own.
Yes,
Pick your
I
own.
do know that there are some.
Yeah, pick your own waifu, pick your own adventure, pick your own sexy. Anyway.
Oh, so you played Honey Pop as well? Okay.
Oh yeah. I have played Honey Pop. I was curious. I was morbidly curious. Okay.
I played probably about 10 minutes of that game. Did the first puzzle. Now it's just this stinks.
But yeah, this is primarily. This is what I like to call it's a step down from animation, but a step up from like a regular book, sort of thing.
Or a visual novel on a DVD that I bought years ago.
Yeah,
that my wife was really irritated about.
Yeah, it is a visual novel.
Yes.
Yep. I enjoy these because I like reading. I like reading a lot. So
I'm not like questioning or doing any of that. I was just curious if there was like anything else, and basically acknowledging that I probably am not the target audience for a game like this. But I am enjoying watching it. So
yeah, I want to say like this is a very visually, this is like one of the best ones I've seen so far. Like it's interesting to see how far Type Moon has come. Like the way they handle the visuals. A lot of visual novels, usually it's just backgrounds and the characters are like standing in the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had I just played B-Side, and one of the parts in the game is a visual novel style game, and that's pretty much what it was.
Yeah.
It was just basically still pictures and dialogue and all of that.
The way Type Moon handles the environment and the way the characters stand, you can clearly see it's the same portrait they're using for multiple things, but they display them in different ways, so it's very interesting. I think more visual novels should take advice from this. She could once again more feel the touch of death.
E salvatio.
Servatio! The puppet was so close that Alco could reach out and touch it.
Bro, did she just refer to visual novels as a step up from a book? On brand.
It is.
Well, I don't know. Because at least with a book, if there's no photos, you can at least make up a scene in your mind based on the thing that you're reading. You can't really do that with a visual novel, because a visual novel is showing you what's going on.
Yeah, it's like between a comic and an animation is what a visual novel is.
Yes, that's actually a perfect explanation as to what it is. A comic and a book and animation. Yeah. It's a comic that you're watching.
Yeah. The puppet was so close that Alco could reach out and touch it. That also meant that it could reach out and kill Alco. Little FPS anime that pauses and that's also a good.
So Speed Racer. Okay.
Yeah. By intuition alone, Alco rolled over to the puppet's right flank. Its arm was still embedded within the wall. From here, it could not attack. She had made the right decision, and her dizziness faded.
Intellectus non necessaris est, pius quiescat. Un nostro rasente agulat fit. Ratio fit tantum est.
You know what? I'm gonna read this because the English text is tinier. Cast off righteousness, lay piety to rest. We beasts are meant to consume each other. Life is but a decoration. Throw away your intellect. Pain powers the mind.
I feel that last line.
Alco pulled herself back up. It was her turn. It was only an instant. With this labyrinth of mirrors, she saw an image of herself.
Vi salvatu.
Ooh.
Fancy.
Yeah. A blinding, brilliant light flashed. Lacerations appeared across the wall. At the last moment, Alco managed to thicken the magical energy running through her veins into a primitive form of magecraft resistance. It just barely saved her life from what must have been the puppet's ace in the hole. The puppet bore a striking resemblance to Alco. This powerful curse was not satisfied with stopping Alco's heart, but destroying her entire being. Alco did not have the time to be shocked. This was her chance for a counterattack. The puppet's balance was unsteady, its right arm still embedded in the wall. Alco prepared to give its defenseless body a strong kick, but her knees buckled and she collapsed into a heap on the floor.
Vevo insomn. Solitare putris cum feris. Ictius meus obitus dies. Et meus natibus dies. Theobeam.
In slumber I live, in dirt I rot alone. Today is the day I died and was born. I come to you. How poetic. A sudden nausea and lightheadedness overcame Alco. Words. Her body temperature began to rapidly lower.
Sorry, I had to pause it to finish my dinner.
She's dying. She
It
noticed
looks like
too late. Yeah. The puppet's curses circled the hall. The curse chant that the puppet used as a source of power doubled as a defense mechanism, crippling those who drew near its illness. She bore the full brunt of the entire time she was in close proximity to it. Although Alco had magic circuits, she was succumbing just as Shojiro had. Languidly, she forced her deteriorating body to jump back. With all the energy she could muster, she forced her way past the exhaustion caused by the curse. However, Alco's blood pressure took a steep nosedive, not from the curse-induced anemia, but from what appeared in front of her. They stood in perfect harmony. In front of Alco was the automata that sheared her face, its left arm held out like an arrow. The deadly weapon shot forward and honed in on her heart. Then, a moment before it made contact...
危ない。
Shojiro, that should not have had an exclamation point next to it. You did not scream out. You just said, watch out.
What? Watch out.
The moment
He almost
she...
did it as a question.
Yeah. The moment she heard that fearless voice completely out of place, in a storm of violence, Alco's body was pulled forcefully to one side. Once again, the extending arm cut through empty air. While the puppet quickly retracted its left arm, Shojiro took the brief opportunity to take Alco by the hand and flee at full speed. Wow.
Whoa.
Whoa.
And they all lived happily ever after.
Yeah, Shojiro ran through the corridor as fast as he could, only stopping when he had put enough distance between them and the puppet.
その考えてみると
Though he had saved her, she looked angry. She looked angry. I'm sorry. She looked angry rather than grateful.
You okay over there?
I'm sorry. It's just she's so pissed off. It's so funny. This did not keep Shojiro from saying his piece.
I wanted to die,
どうも
goddammit.
忙しいみたいなんだ
In other words, let's finish this today. A rather awkward proposal. Alco remained silent. She was also rather angry. Not that she could figure out what made him tick, nor because he'd returned after escaping. Not even because he was spouting his typically airheaded lines. It was, she supposed, that instant. The fact that when he grabbed her hand, her mind had gone completely blank, Alco found it unforgivable. Which beckoned the response.
あなた、正気
In the heat of the moment, she blurted it out before she could stop herself.
それとも自殺願望でもあったわけ。私もあいつもあんたなんか殺す対象に過ぎないのよ。少なくとも恩を売る相手じゃない。言っとくけど、私助けられたぐらいで曲がる信念は持ち合わせていないから。
I'm still gonna kill you! Shojiro nodded, clearly unperturbed.
青崎がそんな可愛らしいもんじゃないのはこの夜だけで骨身に染みてるよ。
She found herself slightly offended.
けど君は勘違いをしてるから少し正そう。あいつの狙いは青崎だけじゃない。君だけじゃなく俺も殺す気だと思う。
You think?
Mm-hmm. She was having none of it. Her eyes shot daggers his way.
話は最後まで聞く。どうしてかっていうと1階の入り口あるだろ、あの細長い通路。なんでかあそこから先に進めないんだ。逃げたくても逃げ出せなくて仕方なく戻ってきた。
Don't worry, I tried to leave before I came back and save you, Aoko, I swear. Aoko's eyes widened ever so slightly in amazement. She felt admiration rather than shock that her enemy would go to such lengths.
それにさっきので完全に敵扱いされた。あの人形こっちをじろっと睨んできたし。いや一瞬でよく見えなかったけど生きた心地しなかったな。青崎も気をつけた方がいい。多分よっぽど怖い顔をしているに違いないぞあれ。
それはご親切にどうも。
Is that the face you're laughing at right now?
Well, yeah, because Aoko is like the proper amount of Sundari. It doesn't turn her brain off. Yeah. No, it's because he said that the automaton had a terrifying face, which we just acknowledged finally after so long that the automaton is supposed to look exactly like her.
うん。なんでこれはもう他人事じゃないんだ。青崎と人形、結論としてどっちが勝っても俺は殺されてしまうんじゃないか。
そうね。そこまでやってるなら目撃者は消すでしょうね。私みたいに。
だろう。でも俺はあいつには殺されたくない。
I decided if I had to choose, I want you to kill me.
え？
His words were decisive. As Aoko looked up at him, she could swear he was trying to encourage her. It was then that she realized Shojiro was looking even worse than before.
ちょっと待って。大丈夫なのあなた。
まあ醤油を一升瓶飲むよりはマシではないかと。
He tried to make light of the situation, but his forehead was clearly drenched in sweat.
そうか。さっき人形に近づいたから。
How could he possibly be able to withstand a curse that made even Aoko nauseous? Nako.
That's alright, we'll just change her name every line now. Keep it consistent.
She bit her lip, annoyed at herself for not noticing this earlier. Shojiro was such an airhead that she hadn't even paused to consider his plight.
下で隠れていようとか思わなかったの？その方がどう考えても安全でしょ？
She really could not understand him at all.
それは青崎が言うセリフじゃないな。でもまあ長話をしている時間もない。そろそろ追いついてくる頃だ。
He turned to look down the corridor. The crackling sounds of a music box could be heard creeping forth from the darkness.
さっき1階にいて考えたんだ。君がやられても俺は殺される。ならまず奴をどうにかするべきだ。
あなた、何が言いたいの？
She asked a question to which she already knew the answer. She did it to put him to the test. If he wavered even a little, she would have killed him where he stood.
提案。あいつをやっつけるのに協力したら、俺のことは見逃してくれる？
助けられたぐらいじゃ信念は曲げないって言ったでしょ。それにあなたに何ができるっていうの？
それは青崎が考えてくれ。得意だろ、そういうの。
The commander who had the overall picture was responsible for delegating roles to their teammates. It was futile to depend on someone who was unable to grasp the situation or evaluate the enemy's strength. Shojiro was proud to share that he knew this. He spoke the truth. Aoko was the only one who knew both Shojiro and the automata. That's why he pointed out that following her orders was the best of his ability was the only thing he could do. It may have seemed as though Shojiro had surrendered his capacity for self-thought, but in accepting that he was helpless, it was in fact giving Aoko his complete trust.
じゃあ、私の指示に 100% 従うってこと？
ああ。それに、これは恩とか義理の話じゃない。一人だと分が悪いから二人でかかるだけだ。善意でも好意でもない。取引って言わないか、こういうの。
It's a transaction. His eyes sparkled as if this was bartering in its truest form.
She is so annoyed.
This child must have learned that from Tobimaru, Aoko thought. Though she refused to let him see it, she smiled inwardly. Sure, he had gotten the best of her just now, but there were times when defeat was not the worst outcome in the world.
労働と報酬ってわけね。それなら理にかなってる。うん。言いたくないけど。
She relaxed her shoulders and sighed. Her face cracked into a wicked grin as if her fears had suddenly washed away.
それ、結構私の好みよ。
This amusement park Dave has been utter bullshit, by the way. Aoko repaid Shojiro's trust in equal measure.
Scene.
結構きついかもね。あなたの役目。
Aoko warned Shojiro, moving as fast as she could without her footfalls causing a din of noise. Shojiro remained near the center of the spiraling maze on the second floor.
実を言うと、もう一つ用意しておいた仕掛けがあるの。自分でもやりすぎだって呆れたもんだけど、あなたがここに来るのが遅かったから。ちょっと興に乗っちゃって。
ん？仕掛けって俺用の
？Shojiro tilted his head like a squirrel as Aoko freely discussed the final ace up her sleeve. Map.
地下の柱に着火型のちょっとした魔術式を刻んでおいたの。中心の柱に点火することで連鎖的に他の柱に仕掛けた魔術も起動する。
Does this mean we're gonna have to jump out a window in the end?
ジャミングを食らう前に作ったものだから直接魔力を叩き込めば一気にこういくわ。
Shojiro was a little unsettled by how unclear that last bit was.
青崎、こうじゃわからない。できるだけ明確にどこまで爆破する気だったのか白状してくれ。あと、もしかして俺早まったか？
いや、単なる保険っていうか、追いかけっこの途中であんたを見失ったらいっそ建物ごと爆破しちゃおうかなって。
I don't know if that's the way you want to word that. That's I think you want it up there somewhere.
It was her policy to be thorough to a fault, after all. She laughed embarrassed to hear herself say it out loud.
いくらなんでも徹底しすぎてる。
Faced with Aoko's cruelty, Shojiro forgot the situation at hand and protested from the bottom of his heart.
何よ、いいじゃない。そのおかげでなんとかなりそうなんだから。
She shot back. Aoko dashed down the corridor, mumbling things that probably would have sent Shojiro packing if he heard them. The strategy was simple. Aoko would use the escape route to the right and avoid the puppet while making her way down to the basement. Upon reaching the central pillar, she would infuse the formula she had prepared with a magic energy and escape. Once ignited, it would take about a minute for the chain reaction to spread through the whole house of mirrors, and another minute for the building to collapse. She would be cutting it a little close, but because she had committed to the maze memory, she was sure she could make it on time. Aoko assumed the chain reaction caused by the pillar would clear the barrier that the puppet had placed at the entrance. And even if she was strong enough to withstand the blast, it would not be able to stay standing once the foundations buckled. Shojiro's escape was long assured as long as the formula in the basement was activated. Next came the most important part. The automaton was at a disadvantage in the obstacle-laden house of mirrors and was unable to move at full speed. It was near the center of the second floor when the building collapsed. It would be caught up and crushed by it. So the problem was keeping the puppet on the second floor until Aoko could make it down to the basement.
当てにしたからね、しずきくん。せめて3分ぐらいは引きつけて。
Ideally, he would be able to keep it busy until she could activate the formula. If that failed to work, luring it down to the first floor would be the next best thing. She understood perfectly well the danger she was putting Shojiro in, but his lucky streak and running speed were nothing to scoff at.
ただ逃げるだけなら。
Shojiro's luck is
とんでもないことをしてくれるかも。
I don't know, maybe I should look him up in Fate Grand Order just to let me see. Let me see what his luck stat is. I need to know.
F.
Fate Grand Orders. Oh, it's not a spoiler. Everybody's in Fate Grand Order.
Yes, I learned this the hard way. Speaking of cosplay.
Let's see.
S plus plus.
Let's see, what are his stats? Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. What is his stats? I believe he's a free servant, even. Yeah, he's a free servant that you get.
Not applicable.
NA. It's all skill. He has A rank luck.
There you go.
There we go. It's not S, but it's almost. It almost is. His endurance is B minus and his strength is C plus plus.
He's a wimp.
Aoko made her way through the hidden passage of the maze, her host pinned on Shojiro. Meanwhile, well out of earshot, Shojiro was readying himself for another desperate chase. He calmed his beating heart using a method of his own making. What mattered most was that he remained calm. The plan was simple enough. And Aoko's orders were succinct and easy to understand. Is that right? Is that the right word? Succinct, or is it?
Succinct?
Succinct.
There you go. Succinct.
Succinct.
10メートルぐらいの距離を保って、できるだけゆっくり通路を3、4周すること。横道は鏡のつなぎ目で覚えて。ここなら左回りで6、3、7、2枚目にあるから、そこをぐるぐる回ってれば比較的安全よ。
It was essentially a looping marathon. As long as Shojiro kept enough distance from the puppet's extended arm to allow her to track him, she could continue to chase him indefinitely. Simple though his attack, Shojiro was putting his life on the line as bait. And then there was the final order to run as fast as he could to the exit when the building began to sway.
結構じゃなくて、かなりきついんじゃないかな、これは。
He nervously stuck his head out from around the corner. He could hear the sound of the music box from the other side of the corridor. First, he had to make eye contact with it, and then head through the shortcut on the right and begin their game of tag. He spotted it and braced himself. Closer, closer. Fearing that her arm could fly at him at any moment, he went over Alco's instructions in his head.
What?
However, he could not quite remember which pane led to the first hidden passage. The third? The sixth? The ninth? No, he was sure that he was mistaken. He was confident that he had memorized it moments ago, but his nerves had gotten the best of him, and his head was now spinning. Then, Chojo realized the sound of his pursuer was beginning to grow distant. And at an incredible speed. Oh. Yay!
Nani?
The unusual silhouette of the puppet astonished him. Before it had taken the form of a beautiful girl. Now it made a bizarre transformation and returned to the first floor to pursue her primary target.
It turned into his deepest
Yeah,
kinks.
Sojiro was no longer sure what to do. Before he had even had time to mourn his failure, the puppet had vanished out of sight. I'll help, so let me go, or so he had said, but now he could not follow through.
さて、自分はこれからどうしよ
Why did you cheer that?
Alone, he tilted his head in frustration. He spoke into the darkness as if Alco would be there to answer him. It ignored him! It ignored him! Meanwhile, downstairs, as soon as she arrived on the first floor, Alco understood what had transpired above her. She did not even have to strain her ears to hear the puppet. Even during its heyday, the attraction had never made sounds like the one she heard coming toward her now. It was a sound of despair, as a horde of monstrous hedgehogs were scraping their way past the mirror in her direction.
Sonic, Silver, and Shadow.
どっち3分どころか10秒持たないってどういうことよ
Well, in his defense, Alco didn't even chase him. Rather than buying her time, Shojiro had instead stolen hers. He had one job, to run away, that was all, she cursed him under her breath.
複数の足音ってことは二足から多脚に切り替えたのね
The echoes made it sound like dozens of feet were approaching. Alco's mind conjured the image of a giant, six-legged spider tearing its way down the corridor. She assumed he died. It was a little wonder that it was so much faster than before. Its perception of its surroundings, though...
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Echolocation. That's it. That's the word.
Yeah,
I
it's
like how
echolocation.
my brain was like, what?
You pronounced it fine earlier, too.
Yeah,
It was talking about bad.
It's just my brain couldn't process what word I was looking at. Echolocation was a particular use in the dark. Compared to the sight-dependent humans, this automaton was far better equipped to navigate its way through the labyrinth of mirrors. If it could not keep pace either, that had been because its bipedal mode made it less maneuverable. Now, the stability provided by multiple legs gave it a speed that was far exceeded that of any human.
どうするどうするどうする
Her thoughts spun out as she tried to come up with Plan B. All she knew for sure that this was a pivotal moment. If she continued standing still, she had seconds left at most. Even in her current state, she knew that she could easily neutralize a bounded field blocking the entrance without casting a spell. All she had to do was feed a little of her own energy into it. Alco could sprint with all her might for a little more than 3 minutes. The puppet had far more stamina than she did. It has no stamina because it's not a living thing, Alco. She could only come up with 3 options. The first was to escape through the exit in front of her. The second was to hide somewhere on the more complicated first floor. And the third was to run into the basement and be stuck like a rat in a trap.
なんだ考えるまでもない
The third option? She made her decision with zero hesitation. Moving her stiff legs again with a determined strength, the oncoming storm was almost upon her. Her resolve firm, she started and ran, descending into the darkness. Whee! We're just doing our best. No matter what, a finale should be glorious. This would be the Mirror Castle's final scene. 2 humans and a puppet. A young sorceress ran toward the subterranean heart of the castle, while an autonomous antique chased its prey into the depths of the demonic dungeon. A minute later, a faint blue charge would ripple through the castle. This was the main pillar in the deepest depths of the basement. Though not critical to the castle's structure, the pillar was visible symbol of it. The girl concentrated her magical energy into a fist and thrust it at the pillar. Ooh. This was the blow that would bring down the castle. She imagined the destruction as she threw the punch, and that scene blossomed into reality a second later. It was a simple ignition magecraft meant to release the condensed magical energy engraved with the 4 pillars at the corners of the structure. Using electricity as a switch meant virtually instantaneous activation. Well, it happened swiftly and elegantly. A hammer of destruction descended upon the Castle of Dreams that had stubbornly resisted its fate for 2 years. Property damage, but it's okay. It's an abandoned theme park. It was almost a joyous sound. And so the lifeless and abandoned castles of mirrors set the stage for its final and most spectacular performance. Aoko's magical energy became an electrical charge that activated the magecraft formula engraved into the pillar. The chain reaction would lead the castle's destruction.
ご苦労様。でも、思ってたよりくたびれてたのね。これじゃあ1分持つかどうか。
The plaza in the center of the basement. Aoko tried to steady her breathing while rotating her magic crest at full speed. She wreathed her arms in blue light, fully aware that she could no longer activate another formula. Well, that's not out of a horror movie. I don't know what is. Her labored breathing refused to settle. She
Looks
stood
like something out of the game I just played.
Yeah, she stood at the center of the basement. Without being spotted even once, she had managed to make all of the way to the central pillar. It was a 100-meter dash in 13 seconds flat. Undoubtedly a new personal best. She spurred on her weakened heart, knowing full well that the fate that awaited her.
入れば追ってくる。地下に行けば逃げられない。当然よね。最後まで逃げ回ろうなんて虫のいい話だった。
Hindsight was 2020. The castle was only a minute away from collapsing completely. If they stayed there, they would both be crushed by the rubble. The puppet certainly did not care. With no life of its own, its sole concern was the elimination of its target, Aoko Ozaki. Indeed, the enemy had been willing to die from the start. She resented her own lack of resolve. It wasn't like her to tuck tail and run for an opponent that didn't fear death.
Vivo insomni, solitare putoresco inferis. Ictius meus obitus dies, et meus nativus dies.
In slumber I live, in dirt I rot. Today is the day I died and was born. Now I come to you.
そもそも自爆覚悟じゃないあれ。6足歩行とフィンの一撃は使いすぎよ。
I could take that thing on.
もう呪詛による魔力補給じゃ間に合わない。
You could win?
Yeah, beat the crap out of it. Bare hands.
Such a perpetual motion device was only as good as its ability to regulate its energy consumption. Using so many functions at once meant it was burning through fuel quickly and losing the ability to process the curses that powered it. It was using up all of the functions that had been given to achieve its aim. This was the pride of a tool. If such things could have ego, those endowed with sentience could never hope to understand. A beast born to do nothing but run would burn any human who faced its resolve.
ほんともったいない。こういう無茶をするのは姉貴だけかと思ってたけど、いるところにはいるもんね。
But Alko did not intend to sacrifice play here. She respected her adversary now, and she was done regretting her choices. There's no time to waste.
行くわよ。ここできっかり。
This has been a really long minute.
Yet, Alko had every intention of paying it back double for what it had done to her. The energy Alko had accumulated exploded out of her right arm. She aimed for a single thing, a head-on attack. The enemy responded with a lethal curse that reached for her heart, like a set of talons. Humming with power, it meant to rend Alko's heart and burn itself out in the process. As soon as she saw it, Alko kicked to the floor as hard as she could. Her long hair swirled through the air as she flipped aside. The lateral move almost sent her tumbling to the ground, but a quick swing of her arm allowed her to regain her balance. A shot grazed her arm. The curse scorched her left shoulder. She did not flinch. Alko knew she could hold on as long as she continued to avoid a direct fin shot.
Snap!
Oh, snap!
Snap! Off balance and in pain, it took her half a second to recover. The moment she raised her hand, she deflected the attack with a fist of magical energy.
せーの!
If the puppet had a will of its own, its eyes would have popped right out of its sockets. It would have been floored, shocked at the strong will that followed this girl to perform a series of moves like this. Alko's response was instantaneous. While her power was not sufficient to completely redirect the arm's trajectory, it was just enough to deflect it harmlessly past her hair. It was all a mistake. I should never have been born. Atone for me, atone for me, atone for me. The chant became a curse that robbed Alko of her vitality. Did it still have something left in the tank? Or was it simply indignant? Indignant? Is that indignant?
Indignant.
Yeah. Whatever the reason, Alko was easily able to resist its weakened defense maneuver. Roundhouse! And her right leg, pulsing with magical energy, shot up into the puppet's chest from below. It was much lighter than Alko anticipated. Or rather, she felt a little resistance. The automaton's weight was determined by its internals, the size of its power source. Ironically, it was the superiority of its music box engine that would prove it to be its downfall.
Venite, venite, venite. Meum sepulchrum, venite.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to my grave. A stuttering...
I don't think you did grave long enough.
Yeah. A stuttering curse. Having taken the full brunt of Alko's kick, the puppet bounced from the ceiling to the floor, collapsing in a heap. Have I been taking care of myself? Maybe. Possibly. Depends on who you ask.
I don't know. I haven't been here in 2 weeks, so.
Its internal construction had been warped by the impact, leaving the drum of the music box that powered the puppet warped as well.
恨むなら設計者を恨みなさい。ダイナモの一つでも積んでいれば、もうちょっとは重たくなったでしょうに。って、
Part of the ceiling came crashing down in front of Alko, snapping her back to her senses.
ところで今、どうやってぶっ倒したんだろう。
She was so stunned by her own victory that she forgot the house of mirrors had already begun to collapse.
Yeah.
こっちの方がやばかっ
You've already blown up the building.
Yeah, you set off the timer, remember?
Yes.
There was no time to relish in a victory or pity her opponent. Not unless she wanted to meet the same fate. At the situation stood, she found it hard to imagine getting out alive.
急げダッシュだ私
She clapped herself on the cheeks to motivate herself anew. This was her bounty for finishing their final battle in a matter of seconds. Her breathing ragged with excitement, Aoko ran for the exit. Whee! This is fine.
Yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah. The collapse was intensifying by the sound. Having lost its support pillars, the castle was buckling under its own weight.
この邪魔
Escaping from the basement was proving to be no easy task. While she was taking the shortest route possible through the maze, she was nearly crushed by the falling piece of the ceiling along the way. This was the second time, no, third, she had to deal with fallen rubble along the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say, destroying the walls is probably not the best idea at the moment.
Yet, she destroyed the debris on the stairs with magic bullets as she ran. The automaton's jamming had long since worn off. The earlier attack had damaged the vast majority of its functions. Ooh. Yay! Explosions!
Explosion!
Hako's breathing was heavy as she ran. Desperation sparked her brain into overdrive. The ceiling seemed to be collapsing in slow motion. Life seemed to flash before her very eyes. Each second stretched into 5. Her frayed nerves made it hard to tell the time.
Uh-oh.
There was debris riddled throughout the stairway, forcing her to crawl up it. She emerged from the destroyed basement into the collapsing first floor. That the plaza was still traversable at all was a miracle in itself, and fortunately for her, the crucial path to the exit was still intact.
よしついてる
The corridor to the entrance was still intact. The basement maze only extended as far as the plaza, so the entrance corridor wouldn't collapse. Only the ceiling would cave in, leaving scaffolding around intact. She got herself this far by telling herself repeatedly that fate would decide whether or not she reached the plaza. Her gamble paid off. It was her lucky day. All she had to do was muster the last of her strength and keep moving forward until... She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Was it naivete? A sense of responsibility? She pushed aside the image that popped into her head and continued running down the corridor.
言っとくけど時間合わせの余裕はないわよそんな上等な作戦じゃないしお互いできることをやったら最速で出口に向かいましょう
That was 5 minutes ago. At the time, Sojiro had nodded with trepidation, and Naoko had not bothered to ask herself why.
何様だっての私今は走ることだけ考えろ
The corridor was giving out too. If she were to look back, she was sure she would see the building collapsing on her. She was also sure she had no time to waste doing so. Her luck was fading as fast as the building's structural integrity. It was a small miracle that she had escaped serious injury up to this point, and she could not afford even the slightest slip-up. An ankle sprain, loss of balance, or even a sneeze would be fatal. A simple pat on the back was enough to end it. So naturally... There it was, clear as day. From the detritus of the stairway, death had arisen to take her down with it. A corpse that had crawled its way up from the depths of hell itself. It was still operational. And it was still armed with curses. It had crawled after her, watching as Aoko desperately tried to save herself.
Just keeps running after her, dropping F-bombs.
The puppet's arm shot forward. While Aoko did not turn to meet it, she could see its reflection in the mirrors.
E salvato, e salvato, e salvato, e salvato.
Extend, extend, extend. This time she could not dodge it. There was absolutely nothing she could do. The puppet with her face sang,
venit domum lux sine somnium, et pulvere simile quotidiano, cor credo.
The worst haiku I've ever seen.
Te judico.
For a moment, she could not believe her eyes. It was the last thing she'd expect to see.
しつこいぞお前。
A fierce expression adorned the face of a boy who had been waiting in the plaza as he smashed the puppet's outstretched arm. Anger really did not suit him at all. His weapon of choice was the fire extinguisher. He must have searched the maze for something to use as a weapon. No, never mind that. It was too crazy to contemplate, but he had stayed behind for her? Ako stopped the feet that she had sworn would never stop moving and extended a hand out to him.
そんなのほっといていいから早く
Sojiro tossed the fire extinguisher aside and took off running. Pieces of the ceiling continued to collapse like dominoes. They kept moving with dust and dirt following in their wake. The shadows raced through the collapsing corridor with all their strength.
I'll be the sound effects guy. I wish I could remember the type of art that is, because I cannot for the life of me remember what the word
Foley?
is for that. Huh?
The
Foley,
Foley,
yes.
Yeah.
I'll be that.
Yeah. The castle was in the throes of death. With a massive crash and a cloud of dust, the final chapter of the fairy tale that had been the Kitsy King land had come to an abrupt end. Bye, Kitsy Land. The duel to the death was over. For a moment, amidst the swirling emotions, any past enmity was forgotten. The two collapsed on the lawn was basked in a strange solidarity. GG memories, yeah. The ringing in their ears subsided before long. A tremor of such magnitude seemed impossible in an amusement park like this. As the sounds of destruction echoed across the park, Aoko addressed the individual at her side.
ねえ生きてる
うん。
チェ
You want to go on the roller coaster?
While the click of her tongue was adorable, the meaning behind it was anything but.
青崎、あいつどうなった？
見ての通りよ今頃バラバラ死体になってるんじゃない
Tojiro sighed, not wholly relieved by her frank response. His reason.
でもそんな心配より自分の心配をした方がいいと思うわよ
He wasn't out of the woods yet, after all.
青崎、子供の頃はいじめっ子だっただろ。
可逆趣味はないって自負してるけどそれで今の自分の立場分かってる
She sat up and smiled. Shotaro hung his head in shame, wondering why her kind tone and expression were so chilling.
面目次第もございません。
かしこまってもダメよあの提案には大前提があったわよねこれは取引だって
I thought you
あな
didn't
たが
say
役に
yes,
立つ
though,
ものを見逃
Elko.
してあげるっていう
わかってる。だから面目ないって言ってるだろ。
Shotaro made a show of avoiding her eyes, like a pouting child. Elko was taken aback by this sulky display. Perhaps he was angry at himself rather than her. He was not mad because she would not let him go. He was mad that he had not done his part. Ako sighed for what seemed like the millionth time that day. She could not figure out what surprised her more, his unconditional kindness or her naive approval of it.
じゃあ覚悟はできてるの
そんなのはできないけど、約束だからな。結局は何もしていないし。
It was certainly the case that he had failed to do any of the things she had expected of him. But just then she glanced back at the collapse of the House of Mirrors. What had he done after failing so spectacularly? He had searched for the extinguisher so he could use it as a weapon, and waited patiently in the plaza as the maze collapsed around him just so he thought was wrong to leave her behind. It was a foolish choice and the exact opposite of her choice to run towards the exit without hesitation.
ま、それでよしとするか。
So she was satisfied, even if she was shocked how naive she was being. It was true that he had saved her. She smiled inwardly, admiring, if not for a moment, the bravery he had continued to show in the face of such extreme circumstances.
役割は果たさなかったけど、アフターケアは合格だし、約束は守らなくちゃね。
With a nod, she pulled herself up to her feet.
約束は、ま、いつか守ってもらうとして。
The girl tried to keep a straight face as she offered a hand to the boy still lying on the ground.
結果はどうあれ手助けしてもらったし、特別サービスってことで、今夜はもう手を出さないであげる。
She bashfully averted her gaze. Though her profile appeared different than it had in the past, it was clearly still the face of a vibrant girl he met the day he first arrived in the town.
何？
As if she had felt his eyes on her, she shot him a frowning glare.
いや、突拍子もないけど、青崎は律儀だなって。
He took her outstretched hand. Feeling his weight as she pulled him up, she could not help but think that he was about the last person she wanted to hear that from.
ところで、今夜はって言うけど、明日からは？
さあ、ま、その時になったら考えるわ。
You're my bitch from now on.
And then they fucked.
She shrugged her shoulders as she was not sure herself. The response was so unlike her that it made Shojiro smile. Was it the solidarity of having escaped death together, or their fleeting camaraderie that made him do so? It might have been for this night only, but the air between them was kind and gentle. A lot had transpired, but the midwinter nightmare had come to an end. The pair had overcome many trials and tribulations, and he could now leave the mirror realm in their wake. Indentured servitude. But before that...
随分と身勝手ね。それはあなた一人で決めていいことだったかしら、青子。
Dun dun
Dun
dun.
dun. Dun dun dun. You didn't get Alice's approval, Alco. It was the voice of a beautiful songbird, a merciless machine all rolled into one.
アリス。
Her voice quivered as she spoke the name. The lady in black made her presence known. The night was not yet over. Her name was Alice Kunonji. She was a witch whose name struck fear into the heart of Alco, an avatar of the night who would allow no witnesses. No witnesses! Isn't there someone you forgot to ask? Yes, this is exactly what's happening right now. We save.
So that was just part one of a multi-part game.
No, that was just one chapter. We're in...
Yeah.
That's just one episode. We're about to enter... I think we're about to enter episode 6.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, it's still episode 5, but it's part 2 of episode 5. The Night of Witches 2. The melody stirred an emotion like nostalgia within them. Something
that was
once
the end of the
familiar,
game. Yeah.
but now lost to this world. They believed beyond a shadow of a doubt that it would play for all eternity. This is the third stream of this... This is the fourth stream of this game.
Some games are very short.
Mm-hmm.
Miside only took me three streams to get through. It was
Mhm.
only like a 4-hour game.
Yeah. From the opening stanza to the final coda, it was a mysterious siren song, merry yet longing, and a herald of the return of dreams to reality. The night shook. A song was spun. Now their lost paradise was unearthed. Abandoned dreams, forsaken idols. They all responded to the cry of a blue cat. The name of that bell was
Ow.
Diddle Diddle Banquet of the Night. All fables made possible, all marvels made real, by the magecraft of Alice Kunonji, more magical than magic itself. Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, and the cow jumped over the moon.
随分と身勝手ね。それはあなた一人で決めていいことだったかしら、青子。
There's a third person in this relationship. Me, the onlooker, says Alice. Alice sat perched atop the clock tower like a black bird of ill omen. She smothered the ruffles of her skirt as if she were preening.
アリス。
There was a tension in Aoko's voice as she lifted her head. The calm atmosphere from a moment prior had long since been shooed away by Alice's gaze.
あの子確か
Sojiro searched his hazy memory. He could not clearly make out her face at this distance, but he was sure he had seen her around the town a number of times. Where and when eluded him, however, the tension of the air kept him from connecting all the dots.
驚いた。随分と仲間思いになったのね、アリス。今夜は私に任せるんじゃなかった。
Yeah, that was until I knew you weren't gonna kill him. Aoko readied her guard and took half a step forward, unconsciously. From an objective standpoint, it almost looked as though she were protecting the figure beside her. Alice's silence grew even heavier. Her eyes fixed on the ground below her were devoid of emotion. An indescribed sense of dread and pressure laid claim over the plaza.
金
If he strained his ears, he could make out the faint ringing of a bell echoing in the distance. A rippling sound wave seemed unbelievably to be emanating from under the ground.
なあ青崎あの子
黙ってて。
Sojiro stepped back, trying to stay out of the way. It was as though he had been told to go to hell. For the crime of asking if the girl was Aoko's friend.
そうね。仲間思いに当てはまるかは微妙だけど、別にあなたの仕事を疑ったわけじゃないわ。
それはどうも。どうせならもう少し早くその良くない予感とやらに気づいてほしかったけど、でもま、ご覧の通り自己解決したわ。夜も遅いし、さっさと帰っていいわよアリス。私の仕事っぷりを疑うわけじゃないんでしょ。
Their eyes locked on one another. Alice's stare was uncomfortably cold. Aoko's was bold, daring Alice as to air her complaints.
いえ、気が変わったわ。せっかくだし二人で帰りましょう。その方があなたらしいわ。帰りしな、人形の話でも聞かせてちょうだい。
らしいって何よらしいって。いいから帰れ帰れぐうたらアリス。部屋に閉じこもって役に立たないムクドリでも作ってろっての。
A disappointed sigh escaped Alice's delicate lips. It seemed that the black-clad girl was more astonished than angry.
青子、口にしたくないけど、本気。
Seriously, Aoko, him of all people? You have probably tons of guys lined up for the mating required, that is, of us of mages, because we don't marry for love. We marry for make better offspring.
They're like praying mantises and they just decapitate the mate after they're done with it.
Well, I mean, usually someone always ends up dead in those relationships, so. Quietly, Alice questioned her roommate nearly 2 years.
呆れた。二人で秘密を守ると言ったのに、まだ半端にそっち側なの？それとも情でも移った？
別に情っていうより私の気分。だいたい方針なんてその場その場で変わるもんでしょ。気分ならなおさらよ。そっちこそ一度した約束は絶対守るなんて時代遅れなんじゃない？
The proverbial knives were not out now. No quarter was given or taken. Sadly, their partnership was one of convenience and had not reached this level of mutual understanding. Their version of friendship was both delicate and unique. When a conflict of opinion arose, each would refuse to budge until the other crumbled. Neither was concerned for the other's plight, and, at least for now, that was how they liked it.
そうね。今の暴言はあなたらしいとは思うけど、
Once again, she let out a sigh, even larger than the one before.
言い争いは後にしましょう。そこの彼をいなかったことにするのは。
Finally, she struck straight to the point. As if making a move to move a chess piece, Alice lifted her slender finger. Yay!
She's gonna eat.
Even
eat
this simple
him.
action seemed mysterious to Soichiro, the same boy who had been hunted by his classmates Aoko Aozaki and borne witness to their automaton. Aoko's violence and an animated doll. But perhaps far beyond the realm of logic, both these things were derived from reality. As surprising as it had been, there was no need to think of them as total mysteries. However, when the thing appeared out of air from seemingly unrelated gesture, he had no words for it besides mysterious. Shoujo stood motionless, captivated by the strange performer's magic trick, as the girl's single-finger mage crack turned into an attack directed at him.
He's never seen a fork before.
He's never seen a fork before.
I eat with my hands. What is this foreign object?
Yeah. A blue light flew from the side to repel it, and annihilating it without a trace.
やば。
Aoko immediately regretted her reflexive shot.
どういうこと？約束を曲げただけじゃなく、ルールまで破るつもり？
The already chilled midwinter air plunging below freezing. Alice looked calm and collected on the outside, but in reality she was sometimes even more hot-blooded than Aoko. This was especially true when it was concerned her familiars. Accidentally breaking one would often result in a week of the silent treatment. But against someone who meticulously destroyed her things, Alice was prone to retaliate without warning.
Alice is petty as
い
fuck.
つかやるとは思ったけど、ついに激鱗に触れちゃったか。
Aoko sighed at herself. Even she was exasperated by her own stupidity, yet she couldn't help but feel a pang of relief. She did not intend to make any excuses, and she had no regrets. If she had broken the rules, then so had Alice.
青子。
なんていうか、
If anything, this took a load off her mind. After all, now there was no going back. Aoko never intended to break her own rules. If there was anything for Aoko to regret, it was putting too little power into her shot.
私的に今夜こいつに死なれるのは困るのよ。なんで日を改めて殺しに来てくれないアリス。いいでしょ？たった1日ぐらい。
To Aoko, it was simply natural to take pro bono case in defense of an innocent suspect.
それは市場？
悪い？一宿一般の恩義って割と大事にしてるの。
私との協定より。
ええ、時と場合によっては。
Sojiro's human rights had not yet entered the argument. The girls were busy pouring oil on each other's flames. The girl clad in black was the first to move, or rather to erupt.
そう。よくわかったわ、青子。私は彼をここで殺す。あなたは彼をここだけ生かす。つまり、私と戦う。ということで。
If you could let me recover for like 10 minutes, then maybe we can fight Alice.
そんなの。
Yeah, the two of them really do seem to have a lot of energy for pretty much almost dying and running out of a collapsing building. Oh my god, I cannot talk.
Aoko bit back in retort. She was very familiar with Alice's magecraft, and knew painfully well how many mystics were hidden in Alice's tiny body. The odds of victory were essentially non-existent. And when the first shot had been fired, Alice Kunonji was without mercy, whether facing a roommate or a friend. And a most beloved family member or a stranger. Once Alice began to fight as a witch, she became a heartless, unflappable monster. Aoko's advanced another half step forward as if to encourage herself. It was too late to back down now. The situation was no longer a trivial quarrel over a witness. The bedrock of their so-called friendship had nothing to do with their individual abilities and everything to do with their being equals in will. This is why, in order to stay true to herself, Aoko had no room for compromise or deception.
もちろん、あんたを殺すことになっても、そこのバカは生かしきるわ。それに。
When do the mechs appear?
Oh, that's fake Red Order. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
Her magic circuits howled as they kicked into gear. Her body, which had been mostly dormant during the battle with the puppet, had ignited, preparing to demonstrate its true worth.
それにどの道最後には殺し合う仲でしょ私たち
Her courage overpowered any fear she had for her opponent. Turning her body, her magic circuits become like the barrel of a gun, Alco fired a magic bullet that was exceedingly basic magecraft formula. There was no nature interference, no creating of wind, parting of water, nor hastening of decay. It was simply the process of converting the imaginary activity known as the magical energy into something real before releasing it as heat. Thus, Alco's destructive power was equal to her supply of magical energy. The magic bullets she had used against Shojiro were among the most basic single-action magecraft that did not require an incantation. At her present ability, Alco's main mode of attack, her magic bullet, could be fired at 3 levels of power. Those were the second level. This required double action magecraft, a casting through activation of her crest combined with a simplified incantation. However, without blinking, Alice dispersed the shot Falco had mustered all of her spirit of fire.
Lols.
Lol. Well, I'm done. Alco tutted in frustration. A swift sneak attack that used simplified incantation would not be enough to break Alice's guard.
相変わらずお堅いこと
Is it too late to hand him over?
一段と独りよがりになってるんじゃない
He's so shocked back there. Alco proposed Alice in order to disguise her own lack of composure. Somehow Alice seemed delighted by Alco's bravado.
Bravado.
Are you happy, Orgo?
That you keep purposefully mispronouncing the word.
Yeah.
I'm more irritated that you decided not to take me up on pronouncing the V.
Bravado. It's bravado. Anyway.
Bravado.
Bravado.
売り言葉に書い
Type it in chat so you know.
というやつね。
Bra.
Bruh.
No.
こういう勢いだけのきっかけは初めてだけど。
Bravado.
驚いたわ。こんなくだらない理由でもその気になるものなのね。
Alice giggled. Smiling with heartful amazement, Alice gestured her left hand toward the earth. Be our guest, be our guest. Stab, 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 stab. Countless utensils shot out from underneath the cobblestones paving the plaza. Is this unlimited fork works?
Silverware is the most anime weapon I've ever seen. No, scratch that. I watched an anime recently. I didn't watch it, but my wife watched an anime recently where a guy was fighting from inside a blanket.
That's good for him. She grabbed his hand as she shouted, jumping backwards before even having a chance to respond. As if they had wheels of their own, the utensils had suddenly appeared for the ground cave chase. As the barrier of spears grew around them, Alco and Shojiro put some distance between them and the clock tower. Oh, you mean Tower of God?
Tower of God, yes, it was Tower of God.
Alright, Orgo, can you distract them for a few minutes? I gotta use the bathroom real quick.
I don't know how to distract him. I'm not on camera, so I can't make faces and dance. Yes, Tower of God, she was watching. And I only caught a few episodes of it, but I remember one where the guy was basically flying around a room in a friggin' blanket. And I think he was using the blanket to create static electricity to fire or whatever. I don't know. BRB, need dinner. You got this, Orgo. No, I've only been streaming for 4 years. I have no idea how to entertain people. I'm probably not too far off on that. The other thing I remember from this anime was there's just some green girl and I don't know. There was some like lizard that could grow or I don't know. You can't see me, but I'm scratching my head as I'm trying to remember the details of this thing. I will say the episodes I see, they weren't bad. I mean, I wasn't really watching the whole thing, so it wasn't making too much sense, but still wasn't a bad looking anime. It's just fucking blanket warrior. Now I'm trying to think of other bizarre anime weapons. Like, I'm going down the ones I've seen. I mean, the Guilty Gear series alone has a bunch of them, so... Somebody fights with a yo-yo.
We're back. I'm back.
Yay!
Yay!
Good. I was about to get into Guilty Gear. Good thing you stopped me.
Guilty Gear. Let's not go into Guilty Gear. That's been overrun by people who care too much about the characters.
Yes. I was trying to think of, like, really silly anime weapons. So naturally it went in that direction.
Well, Guilty Gear has all the silly weapons. An anchor, a
Yes.
yo-yo.
Yes. A guitar.
But yeah. Anyway,
Yee.
let us continue.
Silverware.
Just under 30 feet stood between them and Alice. The lethal weapons that had crumbled the stone beneath them fell short of what Alco had anticipated. Now they encircled the clock tower, making the scene look like the burning of a witch at the stake.
普通逆じゃない。ここは私たちを逃がさないよう槍で周りを囲むものでしょ。
The path behind them was safe. If they wanted, they could try to make a break from the main gate and escape.
いいのアリス。悪いけど逃げら
Why
れるな
does
ら
his
逃げる。
mouth look like that?
Because he's confused.
That's not the mouth, the shape you want to have for a mouth.
If she could just make it back to town, it would be Alco's win. All she wanted to do was let Shojiro get away for the night, so if she could get him back to the city, it would be, for the most part, mission accomplished.
Huh?
Or so she had thought. Without even offering a glance at her target below, Alice, carefully and lovingly, pulled out a bottle from her pocket.
緑のフラスコ？あれって確か。やば！とにかくファイヤー！
Agreed, flask. Her shot was deflected with ease. Gone was Alco's earlier bravado.
I'm gonna kill you.
Anyway, gone was Alco's earlier bravado. It was only natural. Alco had indeed grown as a mage. Over the last 2 years of study, her studies had progressed well. And she'd more or less gotten a grasp of her roommate's tendencies and abilities. This had made her conceited enough to believe that under favorable circumstances, she would be able to show Alice a thing or two in a fight. Alice uncorked the magical bottle. A gentle breeze caressed her cheek. Diddle Diddle fled as a new player stepped onto the stage. But from where would it enter? The sound of footsteps, a nostalgic parade approached.
Ooh. She's turning on the amusement park.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what she's doing.
I like the Ferris wheel and the roller coaster. Ooh, a carousel.
What emerged was a miracle that Aoko Ozaki, apprentice mage, had never witnessed. The dead came to life. The inanimate awakened. The woods were enveloped by the mists.
Oh, wait, you mean to tell
Fire-breathing
me this is a
lizards
bad thing?
lurked in the swamps. Puppets made merry at midnight. Alice Kanonji's slender fingers had transfigured the entirety of the park, as if gently stroking the back of an elderly cat.
いいわ。ごっこ遊びをしましょう。
I don't think this was a good thing.
Nope. For one night, the wasteland of dashed hopes and dreams was restored to its former glory. It was an immortal monster ready to devour reality. A dark fairy tale that, once unleashed, would never let its prey escape.
逃げられるものなら逃げてみせて。どこまで行けるかわからないけど、この夜を越えることができたのなら。
Her declaration marked the start of a desperate battle. The witch in black laughed at her friend. Her musical mirth filled with affection, sadness, and innocent delight.
I mean, she's already proven that she could probably just kill them.
Mm-hmm. Faded
Like,
glory
a
returned
thought.
to Kitsyland. The neon glow of innumerable lights illuminated the night. Speakers filled the air with sounds of vinyl music. Merry-go-rounds, small and large, whirled round and round. All in all, it made for a mind-bending spectacle. It was certainly possible to power the facilities by transmuting magical energy into electricity via alchemy. That said, simply supplying the park with electricity would not have brought it back to life with that which was broken. The young woman did this not by mixing chemicals into a compound, but by melting down divine provinces into a witch's brew.
まずいわね。アリスのプロイは何個か見てきたけど、
Why is she
今回の
standing like
桁が違
that?
う。
She can't decide, fight or run.
セット。
Connecting her anxiety, Aoko fired up the crest on her right arm. If magic circuits were the mage's engine, then the crest was the software that assisted their magecraft. For the fledgling maid, Aoko, this was her trump card. All she had to do was simply supply magical energy to a crest-based formula. It may not have been the strongest magecraft, but it was hers, proof that she was a successor of the Awazaki lineage.
講師2層、直流数も。
The pattern of her crest shifted to execute the formula, which then connected to her magecraft's magic circuits, blah blah blah. The process resembled trains charging rails, a puzzle involving dozens of circuits. She constructed it as swiftly as possible without sacrificing the quality of its construction. Instant magecraft cast without an incantation would not be enough to reach Alice Kanonji. Aoko could gauge the strength of Alice's defense with her initial shots. She would dial up the power 5 times the next time, driving 20 tons of force into her target. Alice had the protection of a thick, hanging fog and the dense barrier around her. However, this attack would be more than enough to pierce through both. If Aoko struck home, it could cave in Alice's chest and end the fight. At worst, it would at least knock Alice down from her position atop the clock tower.
そろそろいいかな。
As always, there was one guy who spoiled the deadly tension, pulling Aoko out of killer mode. Shoujo had been looking back and forth between Aoko and Alice in confusion.
それでどういう話になったんだ？
He said it like he might ask the directions at the train station. Normally, she would have lashed out in response, but his deadly serious tone shocked rather than angered her.
信じられない。慣れてきた。
Aoko swallowed back the sigh and returned her focus to activating her crest.
交渉は決裂。ちょっと怒らせすぎた。あの子から見れば、まあいい機会だし、遊園地ごと私を亡き者にしようって腹ね。
Tojiro tilted his head as if begging for a simpler explanation.
私、
You're going to
割とあ
die.
の子に恨まれてるから。
That's a simpler explanation.
どんな風に殺されるか想像すらできないわ。要するに、
Am I supposed
あ
to
んた
hate
も
him?
私も、あの子をどうにかしないと生きて帰れ
Okay,
な
I
い
was
ってこ
just
とよ。
checking.
そんなとばっちりだ。
まあ、そういうことになるかもね。
As Sojiro protested in a tone wholly inappropriate to the situation, Alko let another blast rip from her right arm. She was not aiming at Shojiro, though. A little earlier in the day, Alko would have been happy to do exactly that, but now her attention was focused on the girl in black atop the clock tower.
She really doesn't learn her lesson.
Nope. Alko's mind struggled to catch up with her astonishment. She had fired her strongest, fastest magical bullet she had the ability to conjure, and Alice blocked it. That much was to be expected. When Alice set her mind to defending herself, such an attack was child's play. But what just happened? Something Alko had never seen before leapt into Alice's defense. A team of horses? A plague of locusts? No, those existed in real world, unlike what Alko just witnessed. Normal creatures could not form like a spontaneous cloud of fog and then dissipate just as quickly into the night sky. Impossible things moved in impossible ways. Alice was not even supplying them with any power source. Those things needed power in the first place. Those broken and discarded things did not follow the rules of mankind. It was an invasion of fairy tales. Compared to them, the automaton looked merciful. Automaton's puppets were products of magecraft, but even they behaved as puppets should. Those newly animated things, however, were nothing of the sort. Empty vessels became living creatures. Dummies warped into malformed beings. There was a fog so dense with magical energy it visibly spread to all corners of the park, bringing it with a monstrous welcoming party that easily numbered over 1,000. Spurred on by the shuddering sensations running down her spine, Alko fired a barrage of single-action magic bullets. Ah. Her impulsive attack scattered futilely. Futilely. Tongue-tied. Futilely. It was futile. The knights of the merry-go-round soared into the sky. Green fire-breathed lizards flocked. The bakeries opened their doors once again, and human-sized loaves of fresh bread marched from their ovens as platoons of newly baked soldiers. Aozaki, Alko and Shojiro were completely surrounded. The Ferris wheel cracked as gently as it turned. A rickety train car raced towards the roller coaster tracks with Kitsy, tears streaming down its face aboard. It was a grossly twisted fantasy. The girl in black reigned over the intensely fueled park. Oh, now we're screwed. Alko was transfixed by the scene unfold around her, and then she realized what was happening.
The drugs finally kicked in.
Mm-hmm. Alice had once told her of Meinster families. Familiars, blah. Among them were 3 of particular notoriety, one of which she recalled being capable of something similar to this. And it was called...
Steve.
青崎だから後ろ
Forget all these other monsters. I want to see the bridge soldiers. And of course, they're now all destroyed.
Yeah, struck by Alko's bullets, the creatures exploded into splinters. It was clear Alko's shots were becoming more powerful, but it was also cause these beings were less robust than your average automata. Alko turned away from the clock tower, grabbed his hand, and began to run.
青崎
ごめん、これ無理。逃げるわよ。
逃げるってどこに
どこって、とにかく行けるところまで。
She shouted as though trying to persuade herself as she valiantly cleared the path. Alko's magic bullets flew like a scream. Blowing away the creatures that blocked or simply gathered around their path, she made a hole for them to escape through. Whee! Look at it go. Five red guys. Magic bullets exploded like blue fireworks. Alko and Shojuro ran down the bumpy brick road. Their bond, forged in the heat of battle, went as far as mutual convenience. They headed for the park's exit at full speed without exchanging a word or look. The weirdness only extended as far as the park border, so they would probably be safe as long as they made it outside. But, speaking in pure numbers, a difference in strength with 2 versus an army, or rather 1 versus an army, Soju was hardly useful in the situation, and manpower wasn't really the issue here since they were facing puppets.
さっきの大丈夫？上からこうでっかいハサミが落ちてきたけど。
Alko shouted as she blasted away the monsters that stood in their path. There's no time to stop for breath or even look back.
なんとかギリギリ。
So as Shujuro pursued, his voice too had naturally become shrill. 5 minutes earlier, they had broken out of the siege at the plaza surprisingly fast. It seemed that the residents awakening different case by case, with larger creatures taking additional time. Red.
ラッキー、朝に弱いタイプばっかと見た。
Alko joked as she mowed down the small fry that popped up. But then, without warning, something outrageous extended its way down from above them.
Was it baguette?
It was the claws of a 60-foot lobster adorning the roof of the seafood restaurant.
Greatest amusement park I've ever seen.
Rock lobster. Don't boil me. I'm still alive. Its pinchers were like a guillotine. As Alko and Shojuro cut across the front of the restaurant, the Red King pressed its tremendous speed, keen on splitting them in each in two.
しずきくん、Uターン！こっちはダメ！
The gate was just on the other side of the restaurant, but they had to take the long way around in order to lose a giant lobster snapping at their heels. Waiting along their detour had been a horde of monsters too many to count.
なんとかギリギリ。
Sojiro called out in response, recalling about how narrowly he avoided his head being severed clean from his body.
手前。うわ、なんだあれ。焼きたてか。
そうみたいね。要するに下級兵士よ。
Alko halted her sprint and set her crest to full
距
operation.
離7、6、5メートル。あの程度ならスナップだけで事足りる。
Sliding along the brick path, she brandished her right arm. I like how Argo is wrestling the song and Cherry is wrestling a Family Guy episode.
Well, I was trying to remember another line from the song, but the only line I could remember is "We were at the beach," which is that's the Family Guy episode, unfortunately. So I can. There goes a narwhal.
She loosed a shower of magic bullets. The snap was a single action spell that favored the rate of fire over power, and it mowed down monsters with satisfying pops.
青崎そっちも。
了解。
Whee! Wow! Blue explosions bloomed along the lamp-lit promenade. Alko's curtain of fire fanned out. It was a marvelous Starmine fireworks show. The toy bread man turned into charcoal.
いける。数でこそ押されてるけど、この状態が続くなら逃げ切れる。しずきくん、そっちは？
いない、空いてる。ここからなら入り口の東側に出られるはずだ。
From the west. With a magical barrage that would leave an average spellcaster blue in the face, the novice mage broke through the siege. Meanwhile, a single bird keenly watched over everything unfold.
That bird's gonna be the main antagonist.
No, don't! That's not that bird! That's the bird that Alice talks to! Chirp, cheep, 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 chirp. The moment the bluebird descended upon its master's field of vision, it made a high-pitched call. The girl listened expressionlessly to the report.
構わないわ。 予想通りよ。撃つこと、壊すことしか脳がなくても、青子の魔力の使い方は波じゃないから。
The robin flapped its wings as if tweeted in response. Perhaps it was criticizing Alice for complimenting Aoko. Or perhaps it was jealous of Aoko for being praised by Alice. Alice could barely make sense of its chirping rant. Aoko Ozaki was a novice mage. Until just 2 years ago, she had grown up with no background in magecraft compared to Alice, who was raised from a witch from birth. Aoko possessed far less talent and experience. There was simply no comparison to be made. In contrast of skills in magecraft, 10 times out of 10, Alice would be declared the victor. However, that narrative changed when it came to a battle for life or death. Alice Kononji was not the type of mage suited for combat. While Aoko Aozaki, on the other hand, was built for it. In a contest that pitted magical energy against magical energy, even Alice would concede that Aoko had the upper hand. Aoko's manipulation of magical energy was extraordinary. The scale of her magic circuits was smaller than that of Alice, but their rotational speed, durability, and output quality, not to mention efficiency, were otherworldly. That was Aoko Aozaki's hallmark. Though she had many failings when handling sophisticated formula, than just 2 years of practice, Aoko had surpassed Alice in simple formula that merely required an energy input. Blah, blah, blah. She also had genius instincts and adaptability. Though Aoko was not particularly proficient at executing magecraft, she was terrifyingly fast. If she had been born outside the Aozaki clan, she would have doubtless risen to fame as a competitive sharpshooter.
でも、残念ね。
In a straight shootout, Alice did not stand a chance. Alice Kononji never bothered to learn primitive magecraft like magic bullets in the first place. She was the class puppeteer. Her familiars served as her arms and legs to carry out all the particulars of battle.
制限時間には気づいているわよね、青子。魔力はいくらでも貸してあげるけど、あなたの魔弾はあと半時で値崩れするわ。
Chirping as if in agreement, the robin took flight. It had been nearly 10 minutes since Alice had made the amusement park her domain. To what would the green fog give birth next? Aoko and Shojiro, was still running about, would soon come to understand the gravity of their situation. Ba 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 ba
Dun, dun, dun.
ba 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 bum.
Wow!
Thought that would have been the end of the chapter.
正門ってこっち？
ああ、その店を曲がれば出口だ。
Running non-stop at full speed had them at their limits. Their breath ragged, the duo rounded a corner at breakneck pace. Amusement park though it was still the infamous Kitsy Land. It would have taken a high school student 20 minutes to sprint to the entire circumference of the park. And though they were now intimately familiar with the park's geography... Geography? It was changing beyond recognition. Transformation was not limited to the park's residents either.
青崎、
何を？
言いたくないんだけど、この遊園地広くなってないか？
It was. Their problem wasn't as mundane as mistaking the location of the exits nor the strange terrain. Oh yeah, it's surrounded by a dragon. Yeah. No, the park was warping and twisting it upon itself. Even as they ran, the structure was expanding and growing like that of a living creature. Soon the pair noticed that the mob encircling them had grown even stronger. Entrusting her back to Sojiro, Aoko summoned all of her effort just to keep from whining. No one would blame Sojiro for cowering in shock, but for Aoko to do the same, she bore responsibility for causing this and dragging him into this mess. She could not afford to succumb to panic.
大丈夫。落ち着け私。遊園地の果てはある。遠いけど、鉄柵はちゃんと見える。フラットスナークだって制限なしってわけじゃない。外に逃げるって選択は正しいはず。現状、外までは目算で1キロぐらいだけど。
Up until now, they had been too concerned with simply running. Their breathing had become labored. They had to run another God. The rest, they would end up collapsing along the
青
way.
崎、体大丈夫か？
whisper from behind pulled Alko back to reality.
大丈夫だけどちょっと一息入れたいわね。
賛成。ここから休みなしで外周まで走るのは。
驚いた。しずきくんも外まで走ろう派とは。
She let slip a giggle. Far from deliberated by panic, her comrade in arms had been analyzing the situation and forming an escape plan.
ちょっとだけ建物に逃げ込むのは。
気は進まないけどそれしかないわね。
Red men had them completely surrounded. Perhaps this might have been a problem for an average person, but for Alko, breaking through their formation would get to the building would be a cinch. The issue was
問題はどんな店を選ぶかってこと。
she considered the characteristics of the transforming park. What would pose a danger and what was safe? The most important factor was not the strength or complexity of the building.
そうだ。選ぶならあの
Keep
単
it
純さが
simple,
正しいはず。
stupid! Kiss!
しずきくんあっち。
After routing the monsters, Alko hopped behind the counter, soon followed by Shojiro.
カウンターに隠れてて。
Like she was in a western shootout, Alko squared off against the monsters using a counter as cover.
ビンゴ。ここならスナーク化しないんだ。
After assessing the current state of the enemy, Alko sat down under the counter.
あいつらは。
店の周りで地団打踏んでるわ。理由があってね。
Alko gave a perplexed Shojiro a grin and took a moment to catch her breath. She heaved a heavy sigh of relief and fatigue.
とりあえずコーヒーブレイクね。ここは遊園地の中でも遊びのない場所だから、あいつらにとっては鬼門なのよ。レジスターも調理器具も最近のものだし、擬人化されたマスコットもないし。
スナーク。
あいつらの名前よ。つけたのは私じゃなくてアリスなのかしらね。あの子の性格的にちょっと想像できないけど。
Perhaps now at ease from knowing they're safe, Shojiro seemed enthralled at her explanation. I could not help but chuckle as Shojiro nodded sagely. It was certain that he had no idea what she was talking about. Normally this would have irritated her, but this time she was grateful for the warmth of his strange sobriety.
それはともかく調子良さそうだな、青崎。
Mistaking her smile for composure, Shojiro broke into a smile himself. It was just another link of the change of misunderstandings, but there was no need to readdress it.
あれ？あなたから見てもわかる？私のマダンの威力が上がっているの。
そりゃミラーハウスで散々追いかけ回されたからな。あの時と同じ動作なのに物騒さが増していれば嫌でもわかる。でもいいのか？確か数に限りがあるとか言ってただろう。もう随分撃っちまったけど20、30じゃ効かないぞ。
あんた時々あれよね。
ん？
Her opinion of him improved just a little bit.
なんでもない。私のマダンの威力が上がっているのは単純に魔力の濃度の問題。さっきから霧がかかってるでしょ？あれ全部魔力なのよ。
Alice released all that magical energy, so I am also superpowered by it. Magical energy was divided into two broad categories. First was odd, produced inside the mage's body, and second was mana, filled with the atmosphere. At the moment, the music park had turned into a fairy tale land overflowing with mana. Although it meant nothing to the average person, a mage, it was a paradise where spells could be cast as much as one pleased.
じゃあ残り魔力とやらは気にしなくていいのか。注意すべきは怪我と体力だけ。
まあ個人的な責任においてはその限りね。
Sojo breathed a sigh of relief. Sojo was protected more than the monsters she mowed down. Alka was the biggest bully on the playground. He had been concerned about what would happen if her magical energy became exhausted, but lucky for him, she was far from surrendering her crown.
頼りにしてくれるのは嬉しいけど、ぬか喜びよ。あんな雑魚たち、ただ動いているだけのガラクタなんだから。スナーク本体は当然として、アリスが他の童話の怪物を出してきたら。
他の童話の怪物。 遊園地をこんな風に変えたやつ以外に
そう。プロイキッシャーって名付けられた私たちでさえ目を背けたくなる反則。不可能な夢物語をも再現する時代に取り残されたデタラメよ。
Shojiro's expression seemed to be calling her out on the hypocrisy.
あのね、私たちはちゃんと現代に寄り添った魔術師よ。できないこともあるし、当たり前のことだけど、近代兵器にはかなわない。20世紀、まあいろんな戦争の後押しで兵器の進化は私たちを超えちゃったから。けどあの子のは違う。どんなに人間の技術が進歩しようと関係ないって怪物なの。例えばあのブレッドマンいるでしょ。あいつには自動拳銃とか効かないわよ。多分意味が分かっていないから。
Naoko casually gestured outside past the counter.
アリスの使い魔は全てが空想によってこねられた神秘なの。前提からしてありえないことだか
Needed
ら
from fantasy.
通常の物理法則と折り合いが悪い。空想と現実は両立しないっていうごく当たり前の理由でね。
なるほど。ブレッドマンってのはあの動く焼きたてパンのことなんだな。
Sojiro seemed to have ignored the majority of Aoko's explanation and only reacted to the part that caught his curiosity.
話を戻すけど、あいつらと近代兵器の相性は最悪。ロケット弾でも効果はないわ。意思の疎通、秩序の共有ができてないから。プロイキッシャーにとって彼らの世界には存在しないもの、意味がわからないものは触れることなく無産する。彼らに通じるのは同じ神秘を帯びた魔力だけっていうデタラメぶりよ。もう完全に概念空間っていうか概念宇宙っていうか。
I thought magic couldn't make it possible things real. This really is fate.
I feel as though the person
あい
that
つらは
wrote
伝
this
承防御
is
っていう
like
特別なルール
writing
を持っ
it
ていて、
as
単純に強い
it
力、
goes on, like making it
強
up
い
as
魔
it
術じゃ
goes.
効果は薄いの。
Well,
元になった
at
童
one
話
point
の話
he's
で
just like,
頭をつかないと
all
倒せ
of
ない。
this
Monsters.
all this stuff is things that he's made up previously, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
Like the concepts here and about fantasy creatures and blah blah blah. And I'm pretty sure I've seen. We've at least had gingerbread men and stuff like that previously for a character's ability, so this isn't out of the realm for him.
I had forgotten about gingerbread men. Those have been around for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
ギリシャ神話のアキレスあたり分かりやすい例えなんだけど、知ってる？
Jojo shook his head.
そう、
He has no idea.
無事帰れたら飛び丸あたりに教えてもらって。定番だけどいい話よ、あれ。
Can we eat the breadman? Jojo was feeling pretty lost, but he did his best to grasp the situation. He thought that Ploy Kishkwas were scary enough to chase Aoko and that puppet from before out of the house barefoot. Certainly the scene before them was stuff of nightmares. So Shojiro had a different way of thinking.
やっぱり青崎の方が怖くないか。
あんた死ぬの？
Shojiro waved in protest, silently pointing out that she had made his case for him.
あのね、今私たちを取り囲んでるのはおまけに過ぎないの。アリスにとってあのブレッドマンもロブスターもソーセージ屋のミンチマシーンも全部が全部私が打ってる魔弾より価値がない。いい？あの動くマスコットたちはね、ただのおまけなの。
呼吸ってこれが？
私だって考えたくないわよ。でもそれが現状。たった一体の童話の怪物だけで私たちは手一杯。そういうわけだからアリスがあと1体でも追加したら諦めて。
追加ってこれに制限はないのか？
あの子が出し惜しみしなければまだ何体かストックはあるでしょうけど、まあ成立する条件はあるわね。例えば川がないと目を覚まさない怪物もいる。この遊園地噴水はあるけど川はないでしょ。
童話ってかけそばとか？
ここに川がないのは不幸中の幸いね。もしあったらもっと直接制圧に向いたやつが出てきてた。
Aoko continued, completely ignoring Shojiro.
話の続きだけどアリスの魔術の基本はマザーグース。
If she's ignoring him,
Yes,
why
Shanika.
is she
イ
have
ギリ
to
スの歌で
explain all of
遊び
this?
心に富んだメルヘンチックな内容よ。
The foundation for Alice's ragecraft is Mother Goose, because Alice is probably part English or something by the fact that her name is Alice and her last name is Japanese.
ただそっち系のプロイキッシャーは怖くないの。
I saw it as an Alice in Wonderland reference. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it's supposed to be. So
Well, he has another Alice that's an Alice in Wonderland reference, so maybe.
does he?
Yeah.
Oh. Never mind then.
Mm-hmm.
聞きたくないんだけど、そっち系じゃないのは。
マザーグースを下地にしたとある創作童話系。あの子のお母さんが好きでね。こっち系のはどいつもこいつも尋常じゃない。私たちから見ても勘弁してって言いたくなるわ。で、この遊園地を生き返らせたのはこっち系よ。多分フラットスナークってやつだと思う。私も聞き流していたから詳しくはわからないけど。
Sojiro swallowed the discomfort making his way up his throat. He really wanted to hear her explain things a little less vaguely, but something she had just said necessitated further investigation.
待て青崎。あの子の話を聞き
When are
流
they
した
gonna
って
fight the old woman who lives in a shoe?
いや、説明してもらったのは随分と前だし、あの頃はアリスの話あんまり信じられなかったのよね。私が素人だと思って大げさに自分の魔術を語ってくれてるな、舐められてるなとか。
I thought she was joking. In truth, if anyone hadn't taken the lesson seriously, it was Aoko. She would have learned her lesson firsthand soon enough when she experienced how real Alice's monsters were. And she also discovered how heretical the Minster witches truly were in the world of magecraft. They defeated the shoe. She's phase 2.
その聞き流した内容は。
なん
It's
で
like
も
a
強力
Wily
な結
machine
界を
where
張
they
るプロだって。
he destroys the first part of it and then she appears out of a window and she's now the target.
アリスが受け継いだプロや山ほどあるけど、その中でもえりすぐりの一つよ。捨てられたもの、忘れられたものを童話的に蘇らせるやつで、今まで誰も破ったことがないとか。それでついたあだ名が触れられぬもの。
フラットスナークじゃないのか。
それもあだ名。とにかく正体がわからないやつばっかりなんで、一つの個体に複数の名前が付けられるの。フラットスナークはその中でも
There's
正
way
体不
too
明
much
さのトップランクの
explanation.
デタラメぶりよ。あなたルイス・キャロルのスナーク狩りって本知ってる？
Have you heard the book of The Haunting of the Snark by Lewis Carroll? Have you, Orgo?
I have not heard that book actually.
い
I
や
am not a big
そも
book
そも
reader.
ルイス・キャロルとい
And
うの
who is
は
Lewis Carroll?
Lewis Carroll?
Carroll.
そっからか。
I have, says Neko.
ドジスン教授はそうね
Let's start from the beginning. As is, I'm about to read you the entire book.
ってとこまあこっちは別にどうでもいいか。人によっては時間の無駄だろうし。今重要な
No,
の
I am
は
only
彼らの
really
残した著作
familiar
の
with
方。
Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass.
スナーク狩りはね、スナークって呼ばれる正体不明の怪物を捕まえようと奔走する冒険家たちの話なの。キャロルらしい皮肉ばっちり、支離滅裂、意味不明、結末不在の本当に困った本で、一行は島で苦しみつつ最終的にはスナークを見つけるものの、見つけたベイカーは唐突に姿を消して終わってしまう。よくわからないもの探しに奔走する人間の風刺なんだけど、
Is it
この
really
遊
a
園地に
snark
お
or
い
is it a
て
snake?
誰がベイカーで何がスナークかは言うまでもないでしょ。
Snark.
Aoko elected not to share this, but Flat Snark added other popular names as well. The Enigmatic Islands, the five-dimensional plane. These names were not given to it by Alice, but rather muttered by mages who Minsters defeated. In mathematics, snark is a term used in a graph theory to refer to contradictory and impossible planar graphs A plane proven to be unable to exist in this world was given the name apt for an ill-fated existence paradoxical in nature. The fairy tale monster ascribed this name is said to have held no form discoverable by man. Alco also declined to mention something else. Flat Snark was a fairy tale monster that could grow. It would hide somewhere in the amusement park, continuously exhaling magical energy until the park completely transformed into a fantasy land.
脅かしてもしょうがないし。
何か言ったか？
別に。簡単に言って、童話世界の再生がフラットスナークの力なの。この遊園地との相性は抜群でしょうね。何しろ元々が童話を元にした遊び場だから。
This had been business district, for example, Flat Snark would have posed far less of a threat. At most, the power would have been limited to projecting the shadow of a dinosaur into the building's window panes.
あ、だからここは安全だって。ん？
Sojiro realized something was wrong when he noticed a glutinous liquid dripping onto his back.
Ew.
He looked up to the ceiling. Their eyes met. Before he had a chance to think, Shojiro hopped up from the floor.
青崎外だ！
Taking the initiative, he jumped out from behind the counter.
バカ、何して！
Trying to stop him from committing an act of suicide, she came to her feet, immediately noticing that something coming to life overhead.
やばっ！
Wow!
危なかった。
The gargantuan mouth clamped shut. With no mask yet to speak of, the burger joint itself began to transform into one giant monster.
もう、なんで天井にピエロの絵なんて描いてんのよ、あの店。普通もっと違うところに労力割かない？そんなにピエロが好きなら入り口にでも飾っとけ。
Alco aired out her grievances as she ran. There was no safe haven left. Moment by moment, the last remnants of civilization were being eroded away by fairy tales. And that should be... Yes, this is where we're gonna end it.
Okay. Whew.
Yeah. Bless you, Buck. This is where we're ending it. Yes, thank you all for joining us. It's been a wonderful evening. You've all been great.
I was gonna tap right there anyway.
Yeah.
So.
This is probably the last time we are playing Witch in the Holy Light Night live. I will probably be recording the rest of the game and putting it on YouTube, as we should be going back to normal as of next week as Azure returned from his business trip.
Fine, normal.
My usual stream schedule, as in I do the normal stuff, and whatever happens on Saturday happens, you know?
So not the actual content of the stream.
just the schedule.
Just the schedule! Just what we're doing! He's back from the war. I mean, he might as well be at war where he is.
Oh.
I'm sure it's not bad where he is. I'm sure it's safely... It's fine, I'm sure. Alright. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.